The 2023 recession will be awful. Get ready. The coming year will undoubtedly see a recession, according to economists. The world economy is currently in poor shape, and a recession is inevitable. The greatest time to get ready for anything is before it actually happens. While the precise timing of the next recession is unknown, we do know that they do come periodically. When the gross domestic product, the most comprehensive indicator of a nation's output, experiences negative growth for 2 consecutive quarters, it is referred to as a recession. However, there has been no mention of this on the news, which may have even dismissed these allegations as hype. What if they are real though? What if a recession does occur in 2023? Having you ready? Will you still be able to support your family while running your business? The widespread consensus among economists is that when the GDP declines for 2 consecutive quarters, a recession has begun. It has already happened in the first few months of this year. On the other hand, the third quarter GDP growth was positive, which raises the possibility that we are not actually in a recession. But why do things have to be this way? Why couldn't the world simply slow down without producing more money for a few quarters and still be fine? Who made the decision that these 2 GDP quarters would signal a recession? When the world's population is taken into account, it is simple to see how the economy would suffer if population were to triple while food production remained the same. Our demand in relation to the growth in our population is measured by the expansion of our gross domestic product. A country's output of products must, at the very least, satisfy its population's demands. Now, if there were to be a population decline, the growth in GDP would not be nearly as significant. Despite this, we are currently growing rather than shrinking. In 1952, there were only about 2.5 billion people on Earth. As of this week, the number has risen to 8 billion, and in another 70 years, there will be another 2.5 billion. In other words, since 1952, the number of people has more than doubled. It is essential for economists to track the GDP because we must always produce more things to meet rising global demand. The creation of new technologies is one measure of progress that is tracked by GDP. If we could create a machine that could produce more food for us, our efficiency and productivity would increase. The problem is that human requirements cannot be met by food alone. In addition, we require homes, jobs, automobiles, and fulfillment in order to sustain our quality of living. In order to generate a single, distinct picture, we must also be in agreement with the variables themselves, how to assess them, and how to combine them. The LEI has been suggested as a new indicator to help us forecast our growth in light of this. The LEI, sometimes referred to as the Leading Economic Index, combines a number of leading economic indicators into a single graphic style that helps us to understand the so-called business cycle. The average weekly hours worked by people employed in manufacturing are first calculated. The average weekly number of initial unemployment insurance claims is also taken into account. Third, it examines any recent orders made by producers for finished consumer items or raw materials. It is a measurement of the amount of labor that companies invest in creating goods that consumers like us would buy, like apparel, cell phones, televisions, and other products. The ISM, also known as the Index of New Orders, is examined in the 4th section. It is sometimes referred to as the PMI, or the Purchasing Manager Index, and tracks changes in supply chain production across the whole economy. The 5th section looks at new manufacturing orders for non-defense capital purchases that do not include airplanes. It examines the products the business has bought to increase production, such as equipment. In place of pants and tables, it would therefore take into account things like AI robots to assist in the production of additional cars, among other things. 6th, it examines the permits issued for newly built private residences. There is a rise in economic expansion and growth when there are more people working in the construction industry. This is a result of the increase in job seekers. There are less opportunities for growth and expansion when fewer buildings are being built and fewer building licenses are being issued. These 2 elements complement one another. But first, I want to get your feedback on the leading economic index, LEI, before we move on to the next segment of the video and discuss its sixth function. Do you believe that this brand new signal will aid in our ability to forecast our growth? If so, please let us know in the comments section below so we can get things started. Let's return to the video. The S&P 500, an index that rates the top 500 US corporations, is examined in the 7th section. In direct proportion to shareholder wealth, economic wealth rises. 8th, it looks at the leading credit index, which is a measurement of the M2, the total amount of money in circulation after it has been prorated for inflation. More specifically, it examines the credit availability of the 6 different categories of creators and asset instruments. It examines the variances in the interest rates between 2-year Treasury bonds and 10-year Treasury bonds in 9th position. The objective is to have 10-year Treasury bond interest rates higher than 2-year Treasury bond interest rates. Even though it is highly rare that these two figures will be inverted, doing so suggests that the economy is experiencing a recession. 10th, it looks at how consumers as a whole perceive economic circumstances or consumer sentiment. The amount of economic activity and our perception of the economy's future are both significantly influenced by how people choose to spend their money, and things don't currently look good. According to the most recent research, if we look at the business cycle, there is a very strong likelihood that we will be in a recession 7 months from now. As a result, our GDP will end up being 1.5% lower than it was the year before, which puts us in the first half of 2023. This is undesirable, since a healthy economy should have a growth rate of between 2 and 3%. We'll accomplish roughly half of what we anticipated this year as a result, and the outlook for next year is substantially worse. For instance, the Inflation Tracking Consumer Price Index recorded 7.7% last week. The level of inflation indicates how affordable it is to meet our needs. The good news is that inflation seems to have peaked at over 9%, but the bad news is that the rate of price decline is too slow. In order to stop this inflation, the central bank will likely hike rates once again, which would harm us even more. The good news is that over 9% seems to be the pinnacle for inflation. We may assume that the government will raise spending in an effort to lower taxes and interest rates in order to terminate the recession and restore economic growth if the economy experiences a recession throughout the course of the upcoming year. However, the first half of the year will see large levels of pain.